Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name's Linda Scott, and I'm really proud to be the President of Local Government New South Wales, and it's my great honour to welcome you to this 2020 Finalists Forum. I'm joining you from Gadigal country in the Eora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders of this land, past, present and emerging, any Indigenous people joining us today, and of course, all of you I know meeting on many different First Nations lands from across the state. The Finalist Forum today is a really great opportunity for us to be able to showcase the amazing projects that were the finalists in the Local Government Excellence in the Environment Awards. Of course, sadly, due to the COVID restrictions this year, we held the awards ceremony in October, and I hope you all were able to tune into that or have been able to take the opportunity to watch the recording on our website. But can I say it's always fantastic, and particularly this year, to see the really incredible projects recognised at the awards. So this Finalist Forum, which is normally held on the morning of the awards, is a selection of our finalists, and all of you are sharing what you went through in the leading edge projects and what you've achieved and learnt. Today's presenters demonstrate how local government is really taking the initiative to improve our environment and hitting home runs for our community. So first up, we'll hear from the City of Canada Bay Council, the 2020 winner of our very prestigious Local Sustainability Award. Council there has done an outstanding job of developing a strategy that will lead our communities to an environmentally sustainable future. And it's already resulted in a 35% reduction in council operational emissions and increased community recycling efforts. So well done, Angelo, and all the council. We'll then hear about Shoalhaven Council's bushfire demolition waste project. This is truly inspirational. It was, of course, instigated to keep significant amounts of demolition waste arising from the 1920 bushfires from landfill. An amazing 96% of material was reused. And then the Illawarra Shoalhaven Joint Organisation will talk about their great work to benchmark the value of resources in the household bulky waste collection stream. After some questions and answers, we're going to hear from Queanbeyan-Palerang Shire Council, one of our recent Blewett Award trustees, on how they use technology and work through drought-affected farms to manage weeds impact the local grazing industry. We'll hear from the great work at Port Stephens Council about how their regional project to improve their data and knowledge base on roadside environments also help to identify and preserve habitat for threatened amphibians like the recently discovered Mahoney's toadlet. I hope they've got photos for that one. And Blacktown City Council will run us through their innovative approach to the challenging task of engaging the community on the issues of climate change. This, of course, is just a selection of the finalists across the 16 categories of our Environment Awards. But of course, don't forget, you can read more about the projects that were overall award category winners in the case studies on our website. It's, of course, been a very tough year on many fronts: droughts, bushfires, floods, and of course the pandemic. But it's been inspirational for me to see how councils have been supporting their communities to continue to deliver projects to help build resilience and sustainability of our communities and our environment. Councils in New South Wales have a very strong environmental record and are really taking this as a priority. Of course, at our 2019 annual conference, councils passed a climate emergency declaration calling on the New South Wales and Australian governments to take immediate action to avert a climate crisis. This motion was led by the City of Ryde, but reflected similar motions from North Sydney, Blue Mountains, Lismore, Belinda and Parkes councils, demonstrating that there is interest from many different regions of the state and councils of many different political stripes. And it really demonstrates the resolve of councils to do things, but also importantly, to show leadership and drive change. To date, 35 councils, including my own at the City of Sydney, have declared a climate emergency response, as have more than 100 councils across Australia. We've continued to support council efforts like this through this forum and through our Environment Awards, through our Pathways to Net Zero Emissions Forum, by writing to the New South Wales and Australian governments, and of course through a range of other initiatives. There's another one published in the Sydney Morning Herald today talking about the tree planting initiative that we're working with the state government on. We're really proud to be partnering with the state government also to provide grant programs such as increasing resilience to climate change. We're partnering with the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment through our Research and Innovation Fund to allocate $50,000 of seed funding for applied research that drives innovation in the transition to net zero emissions. And of course, we're leading Council's call for the New South Wales Government to fund and deliver a fresh approach to waste and recycling through our Save Our Recycling campaign. So these are just some of the ways we're supporting local government efforts to preserve the most precious commodity we have, our environment. And of course, we couldn't bring you the Environment Awards and Finalists Forum without the support of our event sponsors, who can I say in 2020 have really stepped up to support all of you. So I'd like to take the opportunity to thank them. They include Local Government Super, the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment, the Environmental Protection Authority, the Department of Primary Industries, the Ministry of Health, Safe Work New South Wales, the Water Directorate, the New South Wales Roadside Environment Committee, Wolf Peak, Cleanaway, and of course Landcom. Thank you so much for supporting the awards and today's forum. We're also really grateful for all the speakers who are willing to share their journeys with us, and I'm sure you'll enjoy and appreciate the work that's gone into their projects and their presentations. And it's now my great pleasure to pass over to our lovely Kelly Kwan, who's the Executive Manager of Advocacy at Local Government New South Wales, to introduce our first presenter. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Linda, and welcome everyone to the forum. So the first section of this forum will have 3 presentations, and then we'll have 10 minutes for Q&As. If you have any questions as you're listening to the presentations, please type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And also just pop in who you're directing it to, because we'll have the 3 presenters before we go to the Q&A. So our first presenter is Belinda Koytz. Belinda is the Manager of Sustainability and Waste at Canada Bay Council. With over 18 years of experience in local government across the fields of environment, waste and health, Belinda has been instrumental in developing, implementing environmental and waste strategy, services and programs. Belinda is passionate about the environment and wants to make a difference in her local community. And Belinda will talk to us today about the environmental program at her council. So over to you, Belinda.
Thank you. I'll just get my presentation up. Can everybody see that now?
Yep.
Okay. So hi everybody, and yeah, great to be here today, and I'm here to talk to you about Canada Bay's journey with their environmental strategy. And the first thing I want to acknowledge is just how much hard work has gone in from staff right across our organisation to embed sustainability across the organisation. It can be seen by a number of the things I'm going to present to you today. I also want to acknowledge our community for always pushing us to go that little extra step, and you'll see a number of the initiatives that we're trying to progress that are really led by our community. So you can see here there's been a number of different strategy and plans developed in the last 18 months that we're reporting on in this presentation that all go towards the development of our environmental strategy. We started our process of developing this strategy by reviewing our previous environmental strategy, which involved a review of our targets and looking at where are the identified gaps and risks and what kind of technical studies do we need to undertake. That was definitely pushed along a lot by the LSPS process and the need for us to develop those plans and supporting documents really quickly. And so there was a number of community engagement activities carried out. Yeah, we had a great response from our community with over 100 submissions to our survey and 47 participants that got involved in workshops. We also put together a bit of an internal working group that led this project right throughout its inception, and it's been a really great process for continuing to embed sustainability across the organisation. What that resulted in was us adopting an environmental strategy in 2019 that carried on from our 2014 strategy, but now was broken into 4 different themes. Those themes being connected to nature, resilient city, resource efficient community, and leading by example. And these themes were really driven by the feedback within our community survey, as well as what we knew from the engagement work that we'd carried out as part of our community strategic planning engagement. This strategy sets targets for most areas, and where we couldn't set a target or have a baseline, we've outlined what our goals are for how we're going to measure where we get where we want to go. We've summarised some of the achievements that have been realised as part of our 2014 strategy, and talked about how we're going to get there and what our key action items are that all feed through to the sub-plans that have been developed. So our connected to nature section really emphasises the fact that council is 32 or 35 kilometres of foreshore, and the foreshore is something that's really important to our community. We want to make sure that with the development growth in our area, that we can continue to maintain the biodiversity within our area, and we're really committed to growing the tree canopy within our area as well. And we've set a target to for 2040 to increase our tree canopy. We've also been part of the Parramatta River Catchment Group for a number of years, and have a commitment to make the Parramatta River swimmable again by 2025. And I'll talk to you about some of those initiatives. So in this reporting period, we'd planted over 1,500 trees and 4,000 new native shrubs. And we did obtain one of the 5 million trees grant as part of the submission. We planted about 800 trees as part of that. We also received 2 biodiversity grants in this period that will be carried out over the next 2 years, focused on salt marsh and shorebirds. We've got 2 new splash sites that council has committed to as part of that, making the Parramatta River swimmable again, and there's staff working to make these realised within this next budget period. I think what I noticed when we put together this submission was how much COVID had impacted a number of our programs and how quickly staff had to transition. And I think that's something that I know I'm really proud of, that my team and right across the organisation, teams transitioned so quickly to deliver programs for our community. One of those was our Wild Mates volunteer program for wildlife in bushfire recovery zones. We also developed a Bugs Life video and activity series that is now continuing post lockdown, and has been used widely right throughout the community with over 10,000 views now. It's been used by a number of our schools, and it's really important in promoting biodiversity in our area. During the lockdown, we ran a connected to nature photography competition showcasing nature and local places, and we received 450 submissions for that, which was just amazing, right across the demographics within our community. And this was a really great way to keep people connected to nature with that one thing you're allowed to do, go outside and walk in lockdown. In our resilient city area, we're really focused on climate change and transport, and looking at how we're going to make our city move better, and with a focus on cycling. So we've adopted some targets in relation to cycling and cycleways, and getting people walking to our local spaces and places. So we've got a really strong position on putting forward more bike plans. So we've put forward a draft bike plan. We've put in the Concord to Bay Cycleway project. We've also shared the Burn Avenue shared path. We've done lots of advocacy for ferry and bus services in this time, which have had great outcomes for our community. And there was the announcement of the 3 metro stations that are going to be located within the city of Canada Bay, which gives great opportunities for our community in this space. In our resource efficient community area, we talk about waste, emissions and water. So we're currently undergoing the development of a new waste strategy. So we haven't adopted a target as of yet. We are looking to adopt that next year. We have set a net zero emissions target for our community, which was really driven by feedback from our community as part of our community survey. And we've also acknowledged the need to ensure potable water consumption is managed. So in relation to waste, we commenced our waste engagement process as part of our strategy, with over 550 people getting involved in filling out our initial waste survey. We've since had workshops where we've had a number of people participate in online workshops. We've delivered so many great programs. I think COVID saw a large increase in materials delivered to our community recycling centre. And pre-COVID, we had an e-waste event for residents and business waste, which had really great results. We also started the Recycle Smart program as part of the within the lockdown period, which helped our residents recycle a number of different problem waste like soft plastics and batteries and small electrical goods, but also with textiles. Our Community Environment Committee has been really pushing plastic free, and we've been running campaigns with them for the last 12 months that focus on outward community messaging regarding single-use plastics, where they got over 840 commitments to reducing single-use plastic use in the community, as well as a program now that they're driving to reduce single-use plastic use in all council facilities and buildings. We've also evaluated our litter sensor trial in this period, where we put in 96 litter sensors within different areas across the city that measure fullness of litter bins in real time, send notifications, and address overflows before they happen. So we've identified that this has real potential and are looking at how we might introduce this further across the board in the future. We also launched a composting and worm farming series called Compost Capers during lockdown, and it was a program for apartments and residents with composting and worm farming videos and an interactive Collaborate page where you could ask real-time questions about your compost and worm farm. And it's had a really great response to our community, and we're currently evaluating this to look at how we're going to roll this out further in the future. We also did an online program in COVID for home energy savings, which feeds off our energy service that we have through SSROC with Australian Energy Foundation, which in the COVID time where people were trying to save money had a really great response, with almost 200 people logging in for a free consultation during that time. A number of those have converted to solar and battery installations as well. I think what is really evident in developing that outward-facing strategy is the fact that we can't deliver this without strong partnerships in our community, without collaboration with our community, and you know, through programs of education and behaviour change. These are really key core principles for council in delivering our strategy. And so therefore we set a target to increase participation in community-led initiatives compared to our 2017 baseline. So we're really working to try and drive that action in our community. And what we've seen is we've had an increased participation in bush care in the last 12 months. And our Love Your Place program has just had a huge increase in not only the number of sites adopted across our city, we're having more cleanups in those sites and more registered participants in set locations. So there's been a huge calling from the community to do this. And we're also trying to use those groups to transition into other areas. So to upskill them to do bird counts, or to focus on, you know, in other areas of litter or biodiversity. So I'd say watch this space for that. We also delivered a number of community programs, which is really core to what we do, with sustainability workshops, environmental grants, supporting our newly opened community gardens, because that was a real challenge during COVID for them. And prior to COVID, we also had a strong event participation that of over 800 people that participated in our different events. I suppose the one part that I want to end on is talking about council operations and how we are want to be seen to be leading by example. So we've adopted a plan that looks at emissions, water, fleet, and procurement. And we've set a number of targets, one being net zero by 2030. We really, as mentioned before, we've seen a decrease in our emissions profile, particularly during that COVID period. And we want to capitalise on that and look for where those opportunities are to remain into the future. We've also been transitioning our fleet with 36 hybrids as part of our fleet currently, and we're looking at how to transition our fleet further into the future. We've developed a new procurement policy and internal OMS document to guide the way we procure things, which is going to be really key into the future. We've also capitalising on our recycled water program and continuing to decrease the amount of potable water that we use across our 21 sports fields and golf courses, because we have a lot of sports fields and golf courses in our area. So where to from here? I think, you know, we've just launched for our Connected to Nature, we've just launched our tree trail, and I'd encourage anyone to get out and walk that. It starts at Queen Elizabeth Park in Concord, runs all the way down to Uralla. It's really about trying to lift the trees in our community and start that conversation about the benefits. We want to continue to work on building biodiversity, both in our community spaces, in the backyards of our residents. For a Resilient Sydney, we want to focus on developing our resilience framework. We're part of Resilient Sydney, and we're committed to integrating that across our operations and across our community. We want to adopt our bike plans that have been heavily communicated to our community in the past 12 months and focus on more water sensitive urban design. For our resource efficient community, it's about getting the waste strategy adopted. We've got to focus on contamination education for our units, and we want to continue our energy program to support our community in that transition to long-term net zero emissions. And of course, that needs to be underpinned by a commitment to leading by example, which I'm proud to say I've worked at Canada Bay for a long time, and I feel that it's something that has been enabled, staff are enabled to do that, and that is going to continue. So it's about solar projects, it's about energy efficiency, about planting trees, and looking for those active transport opportunities that we can support in that transition, both as from an operational point of view and from a community point of view. So I'd like to thank you. That's my presentation. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Belinda. I grew up in Concord in Canada Bay, and my parents still live there. So it's good to see all of these initiatives being rolled out. My dad's a mad golfer, so he'll be happy that, you know, it's a water efficient but nice looking golf course.
Excellent.
So our next speaker, just a reminder also, if you've got any questions for Belinda or any of our next couple of speakers, just add them to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So the next speaker is David Hojem. David has been managing waste services at the Shoalhaven City Council for the past 18 years. Commencing life as a civil engineer, David has been involved with technical aid in Botswana, developing landfill guidelines for the country, and consulting in mine and municipal waste management in South Africa and Australia, before settling down to enjoy the more practical and hands-on management of waste in local government. His passion is to see as many resources as possible removed from the landfill stream and utilised in innovative ways. And David will be talking to us about bushfire demolition waste recovery. So over to you, David.
Morning, everyone. Let me just get the technology right here. Share. Okay. Are we all on track there?
Yep, if you just put it in slideshow layout.
Okay. Ah, that's better.
Perfect.
Okay, good morning. Today I'll be talking about our temporary bushfire processing or recycling plant. I believe that a picture paints 1,000 words, so you'll see masses of pictures and 2 videos. Hopefully they work with the technology. So in December 2019, January 2020, we had devastating bushfires, as everyone knows, in New South Wales. In the Shoalhaven, there were over 300 homes were completely demolished, and another 816 homes and outbuildings were severely impacted by these fires. So at that point in time, the New South Wales government and the federal government both said that they would fund the cleanup of all those homes. And New South Wales government assigned Public Works to do the cleanup or to coordinate it. And in their quest to find landfill space, because they required a lot of landfill space, they approached all the different local government authorities, including the Shoalhaven. Now, our landfill has capacity to about 2024, so it's not very much. So we offered to recycle or set up a recycling plant to recycle as much as possible. And we thought that 50% would be a reasonable target. Public Works and the EPA it's estimated that there would be about 50,000 cubic meters of non-asbestos related waste to take through the processing facility. So it took nearly 2 months before all these negotiations, or they accepted our proposal and they started bringing material in. Of course, this affected some of the residents who really wanted to get in and start cleaning up. Anyway, the facility was designed to accept a throughput of up to 720 tons in a day. And we constructed a 2,000 square meter receival hard stand area, a 3,000 square meter back of house sorting, first stage sorting area, and a 4,000 square meter sort of second stage refining area. And this is the first load, which looked promising to us, and we thought, yeah, maybe we could recycle 100% of it. And how do I get into, I'm trying to think how I can get into the video. Sorry, I have a video at the back of this. There it is.
On the bottom left, there's like hover bottom left. There might be.
Is that working?
You have to share your screen again, David, so that we can see the recording.
Ah, okay. Sorry about this. Now I've got to find. When we did the practice, I had 3 screens. Now I've got 1 screen, so it's complicated things. Okay, there we are. New share. I've opened up all sorts of things. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a quick drone view of the setup after about 2 weeks. You can see in the background where the waste was dropped off, and then the screens where we screened out the different size materials. All the material that came in went over weighbridge, and it was tracked back to the specific individual property. So we could track exactly what came out of each property. Okay, now I'm going to have to go back and do a new share and go back to. Okay, are we back on track?
Yes, you are.
So, okay, so this is the first stage sorting, front of house receival area. The top picture sort of shows you, we try to do an initial separation. So any loads that were primarily steel or large bulky concrete would go on the left-hand side, and the more mixed loads would go on the right-hand side. In the second stage sorting, it was predominantly a 3-way screen. We call it back of house, and we got the coarse, the fine, and the medium fractions out of that. The fine fraction surprised us in that it was pretty consistent with very little contamination. And this was of great benefit to us because coming to the end of our landfill, we have very little cover remaining, and we're scratching all over to find it. So that was a great benefit to us. The medium fraction was mainly bricks, and you can see, and there were some concrete blocks as well, but you can see how sort of contaminated those bricks and things are with bits of timber, steel, plastic. And then the coarse fraction were mainly large concrete blocks. We still had to try and remove the steel, and there was plastic seems to get into everything in spite of being largely burnt. And then we had the other things. So other items flying through, we had shipping containers that were burnt. Most of the rural properties would have a shipping container where they stored things. You can see machinery used on sites. The gas bottles, I think most of these sort of remote areas rely on gas. So from every home, there were a couple of gas bottles. And then the small excavator, I think it brought tears to our operator. That's the little excavator sitting in the bucket of his excavator. Okay, so a little bit about the products. So concrete crushing. Concrete was our prize product. It came out really clean, and it's got a mass of different uses. At the moment, we've got quite a few projects we're doing on site. So we've used this as hard stand material. It's all it's crushed to a specification, so it fits the spec, and it works really well. This is the brick or the medium fraction crushing. There's some concrete within the brick, but it's all looks good. The contamination still flowed through on the brick. As you saw in the previous slide, there was a lot of contamination. We could go through another refining process, but because we were using it on site, we didn't worry too much. And this is our final sort of leftover product. It's whatever went to landfill. And that material was stockpiled behind these litter catch fences at the back here. And we shredded it. Part of the idea of shredding was that a lot of that was plastic or timber, and we could send it for RDF or refuse-derived fuel up to ResourceCo. Unfortunately, the whole RDF market dried up, mainly because of COVID. So they shut their gates, and this is the material that went to landfill. It was mainly mixed timber, furniture, plastic water tanks, and textiles. This is another video that I'm hoping is going to work.
Me feel rather proud that I'm able to do my bit to help people get their lives back on track and get to the point they can rebuild and get a new home going.
Peter Winley, I'm the Coordinator for Waste Operations for Shoalhaven City Council. We receive approximately 1,800 tonnes of bushfire demolition waste per week here at our West Nowra processing facility and divert up to 70% of those materials from landfill.
I operate a small handler and a shaker screen. I take the smaller rubble from what's been deposited here, put it in the screen and separate it into fine, medium and coarse fractions. Each fraction can be recycled and reused.
I'm operating a 45-tonne excavator, doing pre-sort on the material as it comes in from the bushfire waste.
My name's Joel and I'm the team supervisor here at West Nowra Waste Facility. Yeah, so with the influx of trucks coming in, we've had to put up extra signage. We run 2 radio channels here now, one for the landfill and one for the bushfire recovery waste.
My main jobs up here is to operate the hook lift and the dump truck, transporting steel and recovered concrete to recyclers. We work well as a team, we're getting plenty done.
Almost every member of our team were impacted one way or the other from the bushfires, and it makes me even prouder to think that they've overcome the challenges surrounding their own personal experiences and they continue to work hard to get this job done.
Okay, so it's, that gives you a background into the staff, because it really is people that have success in producing these sort of results. And the achievements, we're totally delighted with the results. 4% of the total that came in went to landfill. It's recycling 96% or 17,000 tonnes. It's way less than the initial estimates of around 70 to 80,000 tonnes. But this is what came in, and maybe this will be able to sharpen estimates in future fires if there, hopefully there aren't any, but if there are any future fires. So you can see the main component of all that is the fine material. If you cannot get a source for the fines or to recover the fines, you're only going to recover about 45%. So onto the challenges. So there were numerous challenges that hit us in the middle, and I'm very proud of my staff for being flexible enough to be able to cope with that. So the first one is the time delays. We put in our proposal to the government. politicians were saying, we'll fund the cleanup and all bushfire impacted properties will be cleaned up free of charge. But the guys trying to put that into action had all sorts of criteria they had to stick to. So it took about 2 months before we got the go-ahead. In the meantime, we hired all the plant and the machinery. We constructed the hard stand and the concrete barriers and everything. So we were ready to go. It just became quite an emotional thing for our staff to take calls from the community saying, why aren't you ready to take our waste? We're sitting here, we haven't got anything, we just want to clean up. So it was a big emotional challenge. Safety was another real issue. In particular, there's numerous houses had asbestos. So the public works went around and inspected every house, where they got consultants to check them, and they assigned certain houses as being clean of asbestos, and those were the ones we accepted within our site. And then COVID-19 hit us. It coincided perfectly with when almost our first load came in. So we had to look after our staff. We decided to stick to a team of only 6. They had to wash out their machines. We tried to stop them from swapping between machines. So once they got one machine, that would be their focus. And they kept separate from all the other staff. Emotional or psychological issues. Some of those plant operators, as Peter mentioned in the video, they lived in the impacted areas and they personally knew families who had lost their homes. So dealing with the material coming in was quite an emotional thing. Yeah. Then the recycling market seemed to have closed, partly because of PEF, partly because the recycling market just isn't doing well at the moment. But the PEF, or the processed engineered fuel, what I called RDF a little bit earlier, that closed off. So we could have recycled quite a bit more, another 4%, but that closed. And then our concrete recycler, who we send our concrete to all the time, he just couldn't cope with the volumes coming in. So he said, stop. At that point, we thought, why don't we just hire in a crusher and do it all ourselves? And that was amazingly successful. Then there were things like the gas cylinders. So the steel recyclers don't accept gas cylinders, as anyone who would have tried that found out. We get gas cylinders at our EPA-funded CRC, Community Recycling Centre, and we tried to get the EPA to include those gas cylinders within that. The contractor was still uncomfortable with that. So we've been bleeding the gas cylinders in there for the last probably 5 months. And we now have about 5 RBCs full of gas cylinders. And we'll probably get rid of them within the next month or 2. So that was our little process. We believe it worked really well, and it could be a good model for anyone else if there's a similar occurrence. And that's probably all I have to say, unless there are questions towards the end. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, David. Really fascinating insight, behind the scenes look at sort of, what happened to a portion of the waste from the bushfires, and that recycling rate at 96%, very impressive. So for our next session, we have 3 presenters who'll be talking about benchmarking the value of resources in the household bulky waste stream. So we've got Yvette Bars, Nicole Parsons, and Dr. Elyse Staines. So collaborating with key government industry stakeholders, Yvette and Nicole lead strategic waste and resource recovery solutions for local councils in the Illawarra Shoalhaven region. With a combined 30+ years of waste industry experience, they're driven to find innovative solutions to maintain resources in the productive economy, which complement council delivery programs. And Dr. Elyse Staines is the lead of a multidisciplinary project team from the University of Wollongong, working with the Illawarra Shoalhaven joint organisation to benchmark, characterise and value resources in bulky household waste. Elyse is a cultural geographer with expertise in qualitative research design. She focuses on tracing everyday cultures of consumption to wider politics of excess and waste. So over to you, Nicole, Yvette and Dr. Staines.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'll just share our screen here now. Slide view. All right, can everyone see that? Fantastic. Thank you for that introduction. As Kelly said, my name is Nicole, and with my colleague Yvette, we work within the Illawarra Shoalhaven Joint Organisation's Regional Waste Program. So we've got Elyse with us here today from the University of Wollongong, and over the past 12 months, we've worked with an interdisciplinary team exploring the processes which drive household bulky waste services, or what we'll refer to as clean-up services, just due to the definitions of these services being quite vague. We looked at what happens to the materials in this waste stream to determine opportunities for resource recovery. And this presentation, I guess, acts as an overview of the whole project. But sitting underneath this are stories and observations and deeper dives for further research and action. So I guess as a starting point, to our work in this regional waste strategy highlighted an opportunity to align household bulky waste services. So echoing the diversity of services that operate across New South Wales, each council in the East Australia region operate different systems for delivering cleanups. So this has clear impacts on diversion rates from landfill. And additionally, with the community having an expectation of the service being delivered as it had always been received in their LGA, further investigation was required in order to provide a case for change. So as an industry, we recognise that councils have a strong focus on meeting state targets for waste avoidance and reduction of municipal streams, which is often achieved through the delivery of services and programs, including curbside recycling, FOGO, and the management of waste transfer stations and CRCs. So there's less of a focus on the diversion of household bulky waste. While clean-up services are delivered by roughly 2/3 of New South Wales councils in some form, the complexities in material composition and the economic drivers of market value mean waste in this stream is more difficult to achieve diversion from. Combined with the relatively small tonnage, these services have primarily been delivered as a community service rather than a resource recovery initiative. So we wanted to broaden the understanding of the collection of these items and the factors that affect their movement through council waste streams to identify opportunities to divert resources from landfill. As a precursor to the project, Yvette and I undertook observational research, including curbside audits. We rode along with collection vehicles, reviewed council websites and comms materials, and spoke with council colleagues and with existing reuse networks. We also looked to determine a dollar figure for landfill space due to the inherent nature of this material being bulky. Based on a number of factors, including operational overhead costs, waste levy, capital expenses, closure costs, site value, and other social and environmental factors, it seemed a conservative estimate was around $330 per cubic metre of landfill space. So we realised we needed some expert assistance outside of waste and approached the University of Wollongong through their Global Challenges program. Under the Making Future Industries stream, we were fortunate to meet Dr. Elyse Staines, who assisted in assembling a team of researchers with marketing, human behaviour, statistics and policy backgrounds to guide us in benchmarking leading practice in this area. I'd now like to hand over to Elyse, which is going to slide, who will lead you through the approach taken for this and some of the key findings that came out of the research.
Sorry, I'm getting my feet stuck under my seat. Hi there, I'm Elyse. And just before I do start, I suppose, kicking off into this presentation, into my section of it, I'd just really like to acknowledge the 4 councils that we worked with as, on this project as part of the Illawarra Shoalhaven region, and also the waste contractors who help support bulky waste across the region as well. I really want to thank them for sharing their ideas, their thoughts and their data, importantly, and for allowing us into their workplaces and on their collection routes. So images of household bulky waste, like the ones that you see on the slide here, they're pretty familiar. As Nicole mentioned, household bulky waste is a really diverse material mix. It's of intact items that hold lots of promise for reuse, of metals and timber that could be reprocessed, and of weather affected and decomposing materials, of broken toys, of bric-a-brac, and then just of kind of bags and miscellaneous waste. But despite this growing attention to different economies of reuse, of reprocessing, of recycling, and this emerging discussion around the circular economy for different types of waste, attention to bulky waste or the conditions under which that bulky waste is entering landfill, they're largely absent from this conversation. So we know from current state level reporting that very few resources in this waste stream are currently being diverted from landfill. So I'm sure many of you listening are really aware of the different challenges that exist in this space. And the collaborative research that we've done here as part of this UAW team with Yvette and Nicole, it's really about bringing lots of these challenges and lots of these factors into conversation together to create a more evidence-based approach to household bulky waste in the kind of very diverse New South Wales context. So the slide here just provides a really broad overview of the approach that we took to the project. We employed a mix of social and statistical methods, and that really, it really captures the diversity of the team that we were working with. So we included modelling and analysis of existing council audits and of weighbridge data. We sought to really map this really vast, complex and diverse and often fragmented sector with interviews and observations with the help of different council waste managers, with operations staff, with contractors, and with truck drivers as well. Our observations of these different models provided really crucial insights for us about how the work of collecting and sorting is carried out. So, and just revisiting Nicole's point that we've all come at this project with an interest in waste, with what we research, but not being involved in the waste industry. We also reached out to the community to understand the kinds of unwanted items that households were getting rid of. And so while a part of that research looked more broadly at kind of what households were getting rid of and how they dealt with that might be through kind of community sharing networks or giving away to neighbours or to friends, it was also really about how they engaged with council services to get rid of stuff as well. So our research really recognises that across the industry, there's no current model of best practice in order to benchmark what we can kind of call a cleanup service. And that it exists here in Australia, but also overseas. The closest that we found, there are a few different guidelines that have been developed over the past few years. So one of those is from the Metropolitan Waste and Resource Recovery Group in Victoria, RAP in the UK, and a recent project from the EU from a group called Urban Rec, and that is focused on bulky waste as well. So broadly, the suggestions that they have about leading practice, about how to do this form of waste management well, are featured on this slide here. So across New South Wales and indeed more broadly across Australia, there is huge potential to rethink bulky waste collection and disposal. And we can see that starting to creep into federal and state policy, such as incentives for landfill reduction or circularity. So the ability to rethink bulky waste is also driven by business or social initiatives and a wider range of community sector organisations that are seeking opportunity for employment generation or for training. But what we know also is that there is a huge amount of innovation and experimentation for bulky waste management that already exists and is already taking place in local councils. And one part of our project was really to find examples of this that are happening within the ISJO region. And we saw really clear examples of that. But to benchmark, or in order to work towards a benchmarking for best practice or for leading practice, we needed to better understand what was happening with bulky waste cleanup services and where the pressure points were in this system. So this service map here, it really helped our research team to identify these pressure points. It represents the various flows of bulky waste via different collection or drop-off systems and disposal pathways. And this kind of represents the ISJO councils that we worked with. So based on our research, we broke down this kind of service process into 4 main streams, and those 4 main streams are featured along the bottom of the slide here. This process map really speaks to the broader set of processes that happen with bulky waste, and I really want to be clear here. So what I'll be talking through for the rest of the presentation is really about the stream that sits somewhere in the middle of this slide. That is kind of really directly between the household and the landfill. Over the next few slides, I'll highlight a few of the findings that came out of this research. And on the slides themselves are sets of recommendations that are made by Yvette and Nicole, and that they have emerged from the collaborative project that has been carried out with our UOW team, but is also based as well on the pre-existing knowledge and research that Yvette and Nicole carried out in the lead up to this project coming to UOW. So these recommendations that will be featured on the next few slides, they really feed into the checklist that's been developed out of this project and which ISJO won the environmental award for. So we've grouped these under 3 themes, and they are the service delivery model, their data and governance, and their engagement and education. So when we first looked at the service delivery model for each of the councils in the ISJO region, we saw a number of overlapping and interconnected factors which impacted the management of bulky waste. There are lots of different factors to this, and so I'm talking about this on quite a broad scale. But really broadly, these included the booking systems, which act really as an interface between households and councils, the cleanup service models, which are used by councils, and the infrastructure which support the service. So booking systems are a really important step in connecting households with cleanup services. They're essential for resident and for council planning, the allocation of staff and resources, and of time as well. So our research found that booking systems are also really important in ensuring residents also know how to properly engage with and use the service, such as where and how and when items should be presented, what items can be put out for collection, and how to avoid illegal dumping. It also provides a lot of information around opportunities for reuse, recycling and repurposing that both might happen within the council service process itself or externally with other groups in that council area. Our research found that households were mostly booking and finding out information online. But we also know that making, or the ability to make a phone call to council to talk through those things is also crucially important. One of the pressure points that we found here was that often these booking systems were understood by councils and by households as being a little bit clunky, as confusing and just inefficient. So for instance, we saw some examples where booking may involve too many steps. It might require a resident to go online to book and then make a phone call somewhere else and then make a credit card payment somewhere else as well. So one thing that's come out of this project is a real a need for review of those booking processes and to try and streamline where some of those pressure points might occur. So if I was to move now to thinking about the service model itself, the research also recognised the diverse approaches to providing and managing cleanup services across New South Wales, with each of those having different advantages and disadvantages, not just in terms of the movement of that waste, but also in terms of reuse, recycling and disposal, and also the health and the safety of staff and the community. One example that I want to draw attention to here is also kind of featured at the bottom of the slide here. So one example is that we, part of the analysis that we did was to look at existing cleanup services across New South Wales to determine the impact of certain factors and the impact of those factors on the amount of waste landfilled. So the first one that I'll talk to is the frequency collection. So for New South Wales councils, for instance, who offer 2 or more cleanup services per year, the amount of bulky waste landfilled via that cleanup service is 49 kilograms higher per household than for councils who offer 1 service a year. We also looked at the visibility of the cost of the service to residents. And so for New South Wales councils that include the cost of the service in annual rates and charges, which we know is often made then invisible to residents, the amount of waste landfilled via that cleanup service is 88 kilograms higher per household when compared to councils who position their costs more visibly. So that might be part of a user pay or voucher service. So they're just some of the bits of interesting information that came out of the project that I've just been able to highlight briefly here. So one other point to talk about when we're thinking about the service delivery model is the consideration of infrastructure in how that bulky waste is managed. So for instance, shredder trials that have been undertaken by some councils, which we've just heard from David talk about some of those shredder trials, they've been shown to really increase metal recovery, but also reduce the volume of waste to landfill. One key finding that's come from the research is that councils should also kind of continue to explore these innovative methods by reaching out to state funding and even new Commonwealth funding programs. There's also scope here for councils to better come together and to approach these issues based on these an idea of economies of scale and look for collective opportunities for innovation across the region. When we're thinking about the service delivery model, one key thing that has been a recommendation from this research is that the aims and objectives of the service really need to be understood by the community and by the teams within council, and that these are reviewed and monitored to confirm that they actually meet both the residents' needs and also the objectives of waste management that are coming from council waste teams as well. So the next one that I'll look at is just data and governance, and I'll touch on this quite quickly. So data collection and management, reporting and governance are essential for planning, innovation, and for future, and for thinking about those future solutions to household bulky waste challenges. Our research found, for instance, that there's really insufficient data available with respect to bulky waste, and not just bulky waste, but also where recycling or recovery or diversion is also occurring. So additionally, current household collection reporting strategies do not accurately reflect the products that are collected as part of those bulky waste services. And that's due to inconsistencies to how those categories of bulky waste are defined across different council areas. So this is partially due to the idea of unclear terminology and the lack of kind of clear definitions of bulky waste. And that happens at a state level, but also across different council areas as well. So while consideration of the impacts of household bulky waste is based on poor data metrics, and that includes a focus on weight as a measure of how that material is being diverted or landfill. So our research really found that weight hides the complexity of those different items and materials. It also sidesteps attention to data that could better reveal the true cost of those products that are entering landfill and also result in a cost to council. So another clear finding from our research is that it's really important to gain a clearer picture of the volume rather than just the weight of that waste that is going to landfill.
It just, we're kind of getting over time. So if you just, we need to wrap up in a minute.
Sure, no worries. So what I can do, I can really just quickly speak to this last point around engagement and education. And really the key points to take home here is the really key role that councils play in providing clear and accessible and practical information to households about how to avoid, reduce, reuse or recycle bulky waste. So while our research found that, the majority of people knew there was a service available to them, but there was very little understanding about what the services provided by their councils actually did. And that was including frequency, the service model type, what items could be collected and the cost of the service. So just for instance, about half of the people that we surveyed as part of the project thought that the service was free for them to use, which we know factors into how much waste is being landfilled. So at the most basic level, improving these cleanup services really requires simple information to be provided to residents. And this should include consistent messaging, and there are some tips here included on the slide, including a range of different media types, and also ensuring that information is accessible to diverse communities that are part of the council. I'm just going to flick over quickly to Nicole now to wrap up.
Thanks, Elyse. And I'd really like to thank Elyse and the team for all the hard work that they put into this. There's a lot of back and forth on a lot of really solid research, especially into that weight to volume conversion and also the community surveys and the opportunities that councils have. So I guess just to wrap up, I stated at the start, this research is aimed to bring about, I guess, all these factors together in a conversation to create an evidence-based model to build a model of leading practice. So it's culminated in a guide which councils can use to review and assess their own services and encourage conversation across council and within the community. So while it serves as a checklist and we'll make it available to you, it should be referenced, you should reference the project report, which contains all these greater insights and tools to assist you on your journey. Some of you may have participated in the WAMA Waste Ed meeting yesterday, and we certainly saw alignment with some of those presentations and discussions and this leading practice guide. For example, Gail Sloan's challenge to all councils on mapping local networks following the Bowers presentation on reuse and repair. So as I said, we're happy to share, and LGNSW has been kind enough to offer to circulate this checklist to after today's forum. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you so much. If we can just get the panelists that have spoken so far just to turn your cameras and microphones on. We've got time for just a few questions. So the first question was for Belinda. So in reviewing your previous environment strategy, what was the biggest lesson you learned and did differently for the new strategy?
So I think there's probably two things. It's really about calling out collaboration and activating community. So I think that we really wanted to make this the core of how we transitioned into our new strategy. And the other thing would be we have a lot more targets in this strategy, but ensuring a replicated baseline that is always easy to access, because we've set baselines before and then one, if you rely on other sites or something else to provide that data, we've then lost that ability to remeasure. So I think, calling out a number of different areas that we're going to target, and then ensuring that baseline is really easily measurable and replicated. So they were two things, that we focused on.
Thank you. It's a question for Nicole and Elyse. So in city areas, there is significant informal reuse of bulky waste, as many people pick through the footpaths on cleanup day. This ranges from locals looking for furniture to scrap metal dealers picking up recycling. So the question is, did you get a sense of how significant this is?
Yeah, certainly. I think through the community surveys and just interviews and discussions that we had both with the community and with councils, it was really something that shone through that people would like to go back to the good old days of a suburb by suburb, put out your debt sort of mentality, so that there was opportunity. And people were reporting that they were using the cleanup services as a last resort. So they would try and give it away through online marketplaces, donate it to charities, donate it to neighbours and friends prior to actually accessing the cleanup service. So I think that's where Elyse and the team's research has really found that having councils promote and map those opportunities and present them to the members of the community will actually assist in resource recovery and reuse and repair of those items.
Excellent, thank you. And we'll go to David for a question. So now that you've set up the site, the hard stand, etc., if required, how quickly could you re-establish it? And obviously, hopefully you won't need to.
Yeah, hopefully not. So we're already reusing it we built a transfer facility for our recyclables. But it would take, and it's a bit like how long is a piece of string. So it's probably take 3 to 4 weeks, depending on weather, to get the hard stand down. And then all the plant needs to be hired. So it depends on the availability of the plant.
Excellent. All right. Well, look, thank you so much to all of our presenters. They were really useful and insightful presentations. We'll move on to we're just running a little bit over time, so we'll move on to our next presenter, who is Simon Holloway. So Simon is the coordinator of natural landscapes at Queanbeyan-Palerang Regional Council. He's been actively encouraging council's weed management team to develop innovative projects and implement continuous improvement programs since starting work at the former Palerang Council 13 years ago. So Simon is here to talk about beefing up Braidwood. So over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Kelly. I'll just share the screen. Hopefully that should work. Okay, so today I'm just going to talk about Beefing Up Braidwood, which is a project that we ran last financial year with funding from the federal government. Just a quick overview, I'll just give a background on it. There's a short video run by the project officer, Luke McKee, who's also here with me today, can answer some questions later on. Then the three main outcomes from the project was a local weed management plan, property weed management plans, and then the weed control assistance for those properties. And then I'll just look at some of the, quickly, the outputs and outcomes. So as a bit of background, so 2 years ago, we were in the middle of a fairly bad drought in this area. Council made a commitment to assist the farmers during that period. So there was offering access to potable water from the town supply, rate relief, but also they recognised that weeds could be an issue. And there was potential there that if council weed officers found high priority weeds, that we could offer them some payment over time if they needed assistance in that control. Shortly afterwards, a grant opportunity came up through the federal government's Communities Combating Pests and Weed Impacts During Drought program. So we put in an application for $500,000, basically to assist farmers with their weed control, and the broader impacts were to assist in the economic recovery of the local areas that were also being impacted by the drought. Part of that program, they did require a longer term strategy, not just go in there and control some weeds, but make sure there was some long-term systems put in place. And that really fell into what we were trying to do as part of our local program as well. So along the same period, we were struggling with the new Biosecurity Act, which had only recently come in. This has been a fairly significant change for councils and particularly for weed officers. The old Noxious Weeds Act was very weed based. So we basically had a list of noxious weeds and a control requirement, and it was relatively straightforward to everyone to understand what they needed to do. The new act is risk based, and basically any plant that's causing a significant impact should be controlled, and that can vary from place to place, from plant to plant, and really it's getting a little bit more complicated to try and work out exactly what everyone has to do. Now, one of the hardest areas is perhaps the widespread weeds, because when you do a risk assessment using the standard process from DPI, the outcome is normally to protect priority assets. And that raises the significant question, well, what is a priority asset or a priority site? And that was an issue that we were struggling with, and particularly when it came to economic assets. And so we took this opportunity to try and tackle that problem. So I'm just going to briefly run this video. Hopefully it'll work. It should give an overview.
Beefing Up Braidwood is providing assistance to farmers. The project is funded by the federal government through the Communities Combating Pests.
Video is not showing, Simon. Simon, we can't hear what you're saying.
Simon, we can't actually hear the video or see the video. Do you want to stop sharing and try again?
Sorry about that. My apologies. So could you see the video but not hear it?
No, we could just see the first screen. We can see the video now. If you want to try and press play.
Yep.
Belinda is providing assistance to driver
And maybe just turn the
Is that
sound up a
working?
little bit.
So I keep going with that?
Yeah, if you can just turn the sound up a little bit.
Okay. Kind of.
And hit play again.
Okay.
Belinda is providing assistance to drought affected farmers around the Braidwood area. The project is funded by the federal government through the Communities Combating Pests and Pasture and Drought Program.
Yeah, the sound is not great, but that's all right. We'll watch the video and we'll see how we go.
Sorry, still no sound?
There's a little bit of sound. It's just really hard to hear.
Okay. I can try the YouTube link and see if that's any better. So if I go back. Oops, what's going on here?
Beating Up Braidwood is providing assistance to drought affected farmers around the Braidwood area.
We can hear it. We can't see it now.
All right, I'll just need to share. It's the video, which is this one.
Beating Up Braidwood is providing assistance to drought affected farmers around the Braidwood area. The project is funded by the federal government through the Communities Combating Pests and Weed Impacts During Drought program. Council saw an opportunity to acquire funding through the federal government to assist farmers. We chose Braidwood for this project because it hosts some of the highest quality grazing area in the QPRC region. We developed the Braidwood Grazing Industry Weed Management Plan in consultation with the community and other government agencies. The plan defines the agricultural industry, weeds that are impacting the Braidwood grazing area, risk assessment and the extent of the grazing area. We determined this area to be an asset using land, soil and capability data. Some of the weeds that can impact the local grazing industry are serrated tussock, blackberry, African boxthorn, sweetbriar, and African lovegrass. There are some weeds that we don't have a lot of, such as fireweed and gorse. These need to be eradicated. Other weeds, such as serrated tussock and African lovegrass, which are more widespread, need to be contained. So to help farmers, we're working with them to develop an individual property weed management plan. The grant is also providing money to control those weeds in accordance with those plans. When we go onto a farm, we meet with the farmer, observe what weeds are present on the property, discuss their management and help them develop a property management plan if they don't have one in place already. To map the weeds on the property, we use a combination of ground truthing and aerial imagery. The existing 50 centimetre resolution aerial photography isn't good enough to detect weeds. As part of this project, we had 10 centimetre aerial photography flown across the entire Braidwood area. We also used the council drone to fly 2 centimetre high resolution aerial photography. With this, we're able to detect and map the density of weeds in specific areas. It's a huge benefit to the planning, management, and control of these weeds. Some farmers already have a property management plan. Those that don't, we're able to provide them with a template and some guidance. On some properties where the weed problem is complex, we're able to engage an agronomist to provide expert advice. Once the property management plan is complete, we're able to determine what controls are required on each property. Most of the grant money is going towards providing on-ground control works. We have engaged half a dozen local contractors to make sure they're still getting work during this drought period. One of the unique outcomes is the development of a weed management plan to protect an important agricultural asset. We will have nearly 50 farmers with a property management plan to help them manage their weeds in the coming years. The property weed management plans and control works will cover more than 130 square kilometres of grazing land. One of the long-term benefits will be the integrated and coordinated approach to weed management. We've faced a few challenges, including drought, bushfire, and water restrictions. Fortunately, about halfway through the project, we did receive quite a bit of rain, which is great for pasture growth, but a lot of the weeds are also coming back. The key message for Braidwood farmers is to know what weeds are important and have a plan to control them.
Bear with me for a second. I think it's gone to the next YouTube video.
We're not tech.
Okay, my apologies for the technical glitch there. Can you see back onto the presentation?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that video, hopefully you could see and hear that properly, covered the whole of the project. I'm just going to look at a couple of bits in detail. So the Braidwood Grazing Industry Weed Management Plan, this was really our first attempt to try and create an asset protection plan for weed management and specifically for the agricultural industry. So we chose the best agricultural area that we had in our area, and basically, as long as we could get something to work there, then we can look at some of the other places as well. So the map on the right-hand side there, you can see the yellow line. That's basically the extent of the Braidwood grazing area. It's about 400 square kilometres. And it's sort of a fairly open valley there around Braidwood. You can see the darker green, that's the trees around the outsides, which sort of contain that area. So this introduction here just sort of explains a bit of the industry that's going on and what some of the weeds are and what needs to be managed. The grazing industry itself, we then sort of defined that, as Luke talked about in the video, using the land and soil capability mapping. So you can see the green colours there. So those are the high and moderate value lands. It was particularly interesting up at the northern edge of the project area. You can see the black hatching there. That's actually the treed area. So we've got an area up here which is grey. And on the ground, you can see that the land just isn't as good a quality. A lot more weedy, a lot more serrated tussock and other ground weeds like that. And it wasn't until we actually started looking more closely at this land soil capability mapping that we could really notice that this is a useful piece of data that we could use to help define the better grazing areas. There are a few patches amongst that area in the light and the darker greys, but they just sort of became absorbed into the larger area. Also interesting to note, when you look at that land soil capability, so further south there and off to the east, there are lots of green areas, but they're actually covered in trees. That's that black hatching again. So you need to look at both of those together when you're considering the actual agricultural on the ground. This is then a page on weed threats. You've probably all seen the weed invasion curve. There's also the weed risk assessment matrix, which is used as part of the standard risk assessment process. We've actually flipped that matrix around because normally the high risk weeds are on the right-hand side, but that doesn't line up very well with the weed invasion curve. So it's the same matrix, but it's maybe a little bit different to how you normally look at it. And this one page here briefly describes the sort of weeds that are in the area and what sort of impacts they're having. And then the main page from this plan is to define, what are the priority species, what's the risk and the feasibility control and therefore the management outcome, and then what's the management action that's expected by the landholders on the ground, the community in general, and the weed office as well. So we're all on the same page here. So this is starting to get back to a little bit towards what we used to have under the Noxious Weeds Act, but this is very defined for this particular area to protect this particular asset. This is what we've determined to be the priority weeds. So the next part of the program, once we had that regional, that local plan in place, was assisting the landholders to get some management plans on their own property. So we didn't just want to go in and control weeds, whichever weeds that we or they thought were important. We wanted to have that structure in place. So we utilised, for those farmers who didn't have a plan already, we utilised the state local land services template, which we found quite useful. So there's a template plan and there's a guide that goes with it. And then the landholders can just fill that out by hand if they want to. Otherwise, some of them developed more electronic bases for them. So we found this really useful, fairly easy to use for the landholders themselves, and gave them a longer term strategy on what they're trying to achieve. Part of the development of that plan was to do some decent weed mapping of each property. So it was partly for the landholders to develop their plan long term, but also partly for this project because we needed to work out where the money was going to be spent on which properties. What was the density of the weeds? Did it need to be spot sprayed or boom sprayed, or what was the most appropriate action? This is an example of a sort of standard 50 centimetre resolution aerial photography that we have right across the state. Once you get outside the urban areas, this is basically all you can get. The satellite imagery you get off websites like Google Earth are pretty similar to this. We have some areas where we have sort of 5 to 10 centimetre imagery, which is typically used over urban areas, but we have some rural areas on the edges, particularly rural residential or environmental protection zones. We actually had a flight booked to fly over the town of Braidwood, and so we paid a little bit extra and we cover that whole area at about 5 centimetre resolution, which is what you can see here. So that cost us about $8,000 to cover about 400 square kilometres. So as part of the project, it was actually quite good value. We got a very good baseline now for landholders to use that data.
Simon, we're getting a bit over time, so we might just need to speed.
No worries. Yep. And some of the key places we also flew drone imagery. So this is a sample of the 2 centimetre imagery, which allowed us to map the weeds much more accurately. So just quickly, on the left-hand side, this is serrated tussock for a sample property. That's the weed distribution map as far as the different densities. And then on the right-hand side, that was the weed control map that came out of that. So as far as the actual assisting with weed control on the ground, we used a variety of different techniques depending on the terrain and different issues. So there was aerial, boom spraying and spot spraying. So then the outputs from the project, so the local weed management plan to protect that economic asset, there was 420 square kilometres of priority agricultural land with that high resolution imagery, and then another 40 square kilometres of drone imagery. It was quite a large area for drones. 50 property weed management plans and 41 properties were assisted with weed control. And the outcomes, we had a coordinated risk-based approach to manage the weeds for agricultural asset protection. We employed 3 local project staff during that period. We purchased a lot of local materials and contracted services, and we improved the short-term weed control on the properties, but also improved the long-term weed management on those properties. And this project's also acted as a bit of a pilot for a broader project across the southeast region, where we've been contracted to look at agricultural asset protection. So we're defining all the agricultural industries and what the impacts are, and trying to assist the regional approach with that. So that's the end for now. I'll take questions later. Otherwise, there's links there if you need to contact Luke or myself later.
Thank you very much, Simon. So our next presenter is Kirily Sheridan. She'll be talking about discovering Miney's Toadlet, a journey to expand the Hunter and Central Coast roadside environmental marker scheme. So Kirily is the Environmental Management System Manager at Port Stephens Council. She's been working in local government for the past 10 years in various environmental management roles and has been with Port Stephens Council for the last 5 years. Her current role is focused on reducing risk to the environment by improving the practices of council. So over to you, Kirily.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'll just share screen now. Yeah, so our project was called Discovering Marnie's Toadlet, so a journey to expand the Hunter and the Central Coast Roadside Marker environmental scheme. So this was a joint project with the Hunter Joint Organisation and funded through a local government New South Wales grant. So how it came about is in 2016, PhD students from the University of Newcastle discovered a new amphibian species in our local government area. They found it in a roadside area near the Newcastle airport. It was named after Professor Marnie, so that's why we've got the Marnie name, not Mahoney, Marnie. It was listed as a threatened species under the New South Wales Biodiversity Conservation Act the next year. So there's not much known about this species. They've been observed in swamps near roadsides, near the coastal wetlands. They're recorded in heathland in Wollum habitat as well, which is similar to the Wollum froglet. And the tadpoles have been observed in leaf litter shallow ponds as well on roadsides. So Port Stephens Council has a lot of roadside adjacent to these coastal wetlands in the photo you can see there. So we have a lot of that interface where our roads go borderline through these habitats. So the threats to amphibian species from roadside management activities are various. There's destruction and degradation of their environment from roadside maintenance activities, but also new developments. The reduction in water quality, so acidity of the water, but also chemical runoff and things like that from the roads. The amphibian fungus as well from using machinery in contaminated areas and then transferring that to other areas. And then also predation by tadpoles, by Gambusia, so the invasive plague mingrow. So the rationale behind this project was there was not a lot known about the Marnie's toadlet. So we have limited data on where it is, what kind of habitat it likes, and also it's been observed in those high risk areas adjacent to those roadsides. So how we approached this project was first off doing data and knowledge gap analysis. So trying to find out where the habitat was, where quality habitat was of these species. Then we were going to integrate that into Council's environmental management system and then into the regional roadside environmental marker scheme. So the data and knowledge gaps, we did first off a desktop analysis, which was looking at similar habitats and where these amphibian species might be. We did vegetation surveys using the rapid assessment methodology. We then did targeted surveys for amphibians, which was seasonal, so we had to do that in a short period of time. And you can see there when we actually went out on site to do surveys, we found Wollum froglets on the road, which was quite exciting. Then we identified high value conservation locations, so we could put in roadside marker to identify those spots and then develop standard operating procedures. So this is just some of the data that we got from the survey. So this location during survey, we actually found Marnie's toadlet living on the roadsides. We did surveys both for Wollum froglet and Marnie's toadlet for both threatened species living in those areas. So we found both foraging habitat there and also breeding habitat at another site. So this location here, we actually had a core breeding habitat of Wollum froglet on our roadside reserve area. There's a bit of coastal wetland that goes right up to the road and underneath the road. So we found several individuals in those locations during survey. So what we did with that data, we used that data and put it into Council's environmental management system so it could be used throughout the organisation to help protect these species. So what that includes is doing Part 5 environmental impact assessments, developing standard operating procedures for our maintenance activities, installing roadside markers at the high conservation locations, so that would be foraging and breeding habitats, putting the marker locations into our GIS system, and then this was combined with staff training and also assurance monitoring and incident management as well. We also included this information into the Hunter Regional Council's roadside environmental marker scheme. This marker program has been around for quite some time. There was originally 9 categories of roadside markers, which included threatened fauna, ecological endangered communities, orchids, and weeds, just some of them. So we made another category for amphibians. So this was included as the new marker category called A3, and associated with this had a standard operating procedure. So this can be used in other areas in the Hunter. So if you've got similar habitat with these risks, you can roll this program out for those areas. This is the standard operation procedure for amphibians. So this is part of a FLIP guidebook for operators in the field. So it's supposed to be used in like trucks or slashes. So if an operator comes across a coded marker, they know different methods that they need to implement at this job. So the standard operating procedure is for slashing and mowing of roadsides, weed control, machine and equipment hygiene, cleaning table drains, vegetation clearing and construction works, road grading and stockpile and vehicle parking as well. So this program, we're deploying out the markers at the moment. So we're out in the field installing all of these markers. We do envision that we're going to do it across the whole Port Stephens local government area, but we focused at the moment on our high risk areas, which is in these coastal wetland locations. My presentation. So if you have any questions, please submit them. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kirily. Okay, our final presenter for the day is Amanda Orr, who'll be talking about climate change communications program. So Amanda is a stormwater education officer at Blacktown City Council. For the past 3 years, she's been delivering stormwater education to the community. She also undertakes community engagement for climate change related projects. Amanda is passionate about sustainability and empowering our community to take action to create healthy waterways and livable cities. So I'll pass over to you, Amanda.
Thanks, Kelly. So I'll just share my screen. I'll try and whiz through this as I know we're running a bit behind. Thank you for the opportunity to present about our climate change communications and empowerment program. So I'll just give a quick overview of what I'll be talking to you about today. So we'll just give an introduction about the program, some context about Blacktown City's climate challenges, our program objectives and achievements, and how we worked through COVID-19 with our planned workshops and initiatives. I'll give a brief overview of our 3 example projects from the program. So they are Cool Streets, our Great West Walk Tree Tags, and our Resilient Blacktown project, and what's next for us for the program. So in 2018, we had our Responding to Climate Change policy endorsed, and that was to assist our community to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and build resilience to climate change. And in February this year, we declared that we were in a state of climate emergency, and we also committed to an aspirational target of net zero emissions for Blacktown City by 2040. And every year we will set aside a climate change emergency fund that we can draw on to implement climate change initiatives. And in the photo here you see here is our Blacktown Leisure Centre in Centre Hope Gardens. And you can see we've installed a lot of solar panels on there, which will go a long way to help us reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So our climate change communication empowerment program was embedded in our 20 operational plans with the following actions, which is to increase the community's involvement in understanding of the impacts of climate change. We want to deliver environmental engagement activities that will respond to community needs, and we will also increase engagement in environmental and sustainable living through our social media platforms. And in the photo below here is a project that we partnered with NRMA Insurance, where they very generously funded 10 trees in 10 playgrounds, so overall 100 trees to be planted in 10 playgrounds across our city to increase shade for our playgrounds so families can use our amenities more and be able to increase social connections and therefore increase resilience as well. So I'll talk about our climate challenges. So Blacktown City is in Western Sydney, and we have very big risks in increases to urban heat, storms and floods. Right now we are experiencing 10 to 20 hot days annually, and a hot day is defined as any day that has temperature over 35 degrees. And we'll expect to see another 5 to 10 hot days every year between 2020 to 2039. So because we are also experiencing a big increase in our population, we are expecting to reach 522,000 residents from 395,000 by 2036. So that's a big increase. And with a big increase in population, we have to have a lot of new development to accommodate that increase. And that new development often means removal of trees and vegetation, and increased impervious surfaces, which will stop water from soaking in during rain events, and that will reduce evaporative cooling on hot days, which will make local environments much more hotter. So as you can see here in the picture below, this was one of our cool seals projects where we put a layer of cooling material on the roads to make it make the sun reflect off the material more, which will help cool the environment more. So with the infrared photo, you can see just how hot roads can get. So which is why we wanted to do that initiative as a way to help reduce urban heat in our residential areas. So with the program, we had 5 main objectives. So we wanted to educate, encourage and empower residents to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, make adaptations to impacts of climate change, and be prepared in case of related disasters or emergencies. And we wanted to cover these topics in a way that could be suitable for different audiences and also to emphasize empowerment for them as well. So here are some main achievements from our program. We had over 500 people attend 8 events. We had over 237,000 people download 29 Facebook posts on topics including saving energy in the home and the Get Prepared app, which is the middle picture there, that was developed by Red Cross. 14,000 people watched 8 different videos we produced, which focused on emergency preparedness and who to go for help in an emergency or disaster. Every month we put articles in our Sustainable Living Blacktown e-newsletter, which is managed by our team, and we have 22 articles for those topics as well. We received over 150 requests for quotes on home efficiency improvements and or installing solar panels through the Australian Energy Foundation. So as some of us have pointed out before, this year we've had to really be flexible with our engagement with the community because of COVID-19. So for example, we had all of these events lined up, excuse me, for our 5 Million Trees grants that we were also successful for. But unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we've had to make them all online. So to do that, we've held webinars and Cool Your Yard workshops. So for those workshops that they were focused on adapting to urban heat, and we had Dr. Sebastian Fouch from from Western Sydney University to facilitate those workshops, and we had a really good response from our community on those. For reducing emissions, we held solar and battery storage workshops and also workshops on reducing energy use. We held one-on-one appointments with the Energy and Water Ombudsman New South Wales to help residents learn more about their bills and how they can save money. And we also provided tools like Sunspot to help our residents increase renewable energy. So Sunspot is a tool that our residents can use that can calculate the solar potential of their roof. So this was really important for us because we have a very big demographic range in our community. So we have in Mount Druitt, for example, one of our suburbs, we have quite low socioeconomic communities. So providing the one-on-one appointments with the E1 will really help them with making their lives a bit more easier. But we also wanted to cater to audiences that have the ability to, for example, install solar panels on their houses. So that's why we provide Sunspot as a tool to cater to those audiences as well. So this is an example of some photos from our Cool Your Yards workshop. So the aim of this workshop was to help our residents learn how to plant a tree correctly. Obviously, this was before COVID-19, but we had plans to adapt this online. And so this was at our Blacktown showground, and that also had a very good response as well. So I'll move on to our first key project called Cool Streets that was done in Schofields in partnership with a developer in that suburb as well. So I'll just play a video for you that will capture the whole program and explain it hopefully in a really interesting way. So I'll just play that now. Please let me know if it doesn't work.
Cool Streets is a project that aims to empower local communities to choose the right tree planting outcome for their street. We're very aware that our climate's changing, and we like to partner with councils and local communities to choose tree planting that can cool local temperatures and provide great outcomes for their neighbourhood. And these are the environmental benefits, but also the electricity benefits.
This one's the best environmentally. So the bill savings aren't as good, but you save a lot more CO2.
This Cool Streets program will really benefit our customers by engaging our customers and actually asking them what's actually really important to them, and also providing some education on the benefits of trees, reducing the heat sink that is really prevalent in Western Sydney, and ultimately engaging the customers so they actually go on and look after the trees and really take a real ownership over the future of their community and the livability of the area in which they live.
I think this is the very first event the council has conducted here after I moved here to the suburb. So I think it's really great. As you see, the streets are like bare and there's no trees, so there's a lot of sun coming in. So we need all these trees to keep the street cool and give a lot of shades.
Okay, so oops. Yeah, so I only had this slide in case the video didn't work, but as you can see, this is a panel that we had for residents to make their choice, and a really good result was that 85% of residents that were surveyed, they selected tree designs with really good canopy cover shading their homes, which is the selection to the right on that photo. So we'll move on to Great West Walk tree tags. This was a project that we had consultants help us with called Edge Environment, which was installing tree tags along Great West Walk. And the Great West Walk is a network of reserves, parks, footpaths, cycleways, and bush trails all the way between Parramatta and Katoomba. And approximately 34 kilometres of this walk is in Blacktown City, starting from Seven Hills all the way to Ropes Crossing. So these tags really illustrate the importance and benefits of trees through relatable metrics. So we really wanted to do this project because we thought if we could show our community metrics that they could relate to, it would help their support for trees in their local environment. So for example, so we selected 4 species. So one of the species was forest red gum. So I'm not sure if you can see in the photo, but some stats include forest red gum can provide enough oxygen for in 1 year up to 40 people to breathe for a day. And it also can provide shade equivalent to 635 beach umbrellas, and absorb enough carbon each year to fill 595 rugby balls. So there's some quite astounding statistics, and we hope that will gauge our community's interests or catch our community's interests, and build more support for trees. So here are some comments from Facebook. We uploaded some photos of the tracks on the trees, and I won't read them out, but you can have a read for yourself, some positive comments received. So that was really good to see. So with Resilient Blacktown, so I'll just introduce this a little bit. So this initiative came from us being a member of Resilient Sydney, which is an initiative to help our community adapt to shocks and stresses in the coming future. So stresses can include affordable housing and quite recently COVID-19, so pandemics. But for Western Sydney and Blacktown in particular, we have shocks such as heat waves. So that's something we really want to help our community be able to adapt to, which is why we developed Resilient Blacktown. So this project educates and empowers our community to be more resilient and prepared for disasters and emergencies. So we held a picnic day and we partnered with emergency services like SES, Rural Fire Services, Police Force and Fire and Rescue. Community stakeholders such as Parramatta River Catchment Group, service providers like Sydwest Multicultural Services, which engage with our multicultural community groups, and Fraser's Property Group, which is where we held the event, one of their locations. We also developed a Resilient Blacktown Be Prepared video series, which is a series of videos to help our communities with tips on how they can be prepared for emergencies. And another good result from this project is on our picnic day, 96% of respondents indicated that they felt better prepared after attending our event, which is really good to see. So this is the second video that I'd like to show, just a quick video, tips provided by state emergency services for when disasters happen, emergencies.
Hi everyone, I'm Alan Rollinson from the New South Wales State Emergency Services. I'm the local commander for the Blacktown local government area, and alongside of me I have Paddy Platypus, who's our mascot for the service. The State Emergency Services are responsible for floods, tsunamis and storms. The way they could assist the SES is to make sure they clean their gutters, secure items that are in their backyard so they don't become flying objects when the winds hit. Monitor the weather forecast when they do come out. Make sure you understand your flood risks. If you need assistance from the State Emergency Services, especially around from Blacktown, is you ring the 132 500 number.
Watch our next video to learn about the local emergency services and community groups. Be prepared, stay connected, and stay safe.
So we have a range of those videos and we've promoted them on Facebook, and we are working with our community development team to promote those within their networks as well. So what's next for us? We plan to run Resilient Blacktown Picnic Day as an annual event, restrictions permitting, hopefully next year, and continue with partnerships like Sydwest to really connect across our culturally and linguistically diverse groups in our community. And we want to increase and broaden our engagement activities using a range of tools, and which will also increase our reach and sustain the benefits that we will get. We will also continue to monitor and evaluate our program just to make sure we're continually improving and making sure we're engaging everyone in our community so they can get the benefits from the program. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. That urban heat map really shows sort of the impact of heat and sort of the benefits of obviously good tree coverage and other cooling treatments. Look, we've probably only got time for sort of one or two questions. Question for you, Simon, if you wanted to just turn on your camera and your microphone. So what was the local LLS involved in your project? Andy McQueen, I think. I thought they may have had a role to play in this space.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, traditionally, local land services and CMA before them had the carrot when it came to things like this, and council has the big stick with the legal perspective. So, you know, we sort of found ourselves in the carrot seat for a change. The grants themselves were specifically through local councils. So we're the lead agency, but like Local Land Services were involved. They certainly promoted the project with other clients they were working with. They attended the workshops that we ran with the local community, and we kept them involved with the project as we went along. And as I mentioned, the weed management plan was something that they developed, and we utilised that.
Thank you. And a question for Kirily. Do you GPS the roadside markers, and is this information available for workers when on site, for example, through a tablet system?
Yeah, so we've GPS marked every marker, and that's gone into our GIS system, and it's available in tablet in the field and also for capital works planning as well. We're also looking at next year, we've got GPS in vehicles. So we're looking at geofencing the roadside markers as well. So when an operator drives into the roadside marker zone, they get a notification that they've entered a sensitive area.
Excellent. And just a final follow-up question. Do you know if the amphibian marker has been adopted by any other councils or regions?
I don't think it has as yet, as it's quite new. We have launched it with Hunter Joint Organisation, so it is ready to use. I don't know as yet if anyone has used it because it's so new. Okay, excellent. All right, well, look, thank you very much on behalf of Local Government New South Wales. Thanks to all of our presenters today for sharing their projects and their experiences with us. And our thanks as well to everyone that tuned in to listen and ask some insightful questions. We'll circulate an email with a link to a copy of all of the presentations so that you've got all of the details there. And a final thank you to our forum sponsor, Landcom, and to our other award sponsors, Local Government Super, Water Directorate, Wolf Peak, Cleanaway, Landcom, New South Wales Roadside Environment Committee, and the New South Wales Government through the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment, the Environment Protection Authority, Department of Primary Industries, Minister for Health and Safe Work, New South Wales. Local government has such a pivotal role in influencing what happens in our local environment, and these projects just show us how innovative and forward-thinking local government is. So if you're looking for inspiration or to ask some more questions about your favourite project, don't forget that case studies and contact details for many of these projects and a lot of others are also available on the Local Government New South Wales website if you go to the Environment Awards page. And as Linda mentioned, congratulations also to all the councils who have been successful in receiving grant funding under the Greening Our City program that Local Government New South Wales is administering in conjunction with DPI, and that was formally announced today. So I'd like to wish everyone all the best for a restful and re-energising festive season, and we look forward to holding our Forum and Awards event, fingers crossed, in person in 2021. Thank you very much, everybody.